everyone for joining us this afternoon, or from wherever you're from, whatever time of the day it is. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about a topic that I'm very passionate about. That is urban farming, front yard farming. And I'll start by giving a little bit of an introduction about myself, and I'll just share my screen to get going with. There we go. Excellent. So I thought I'd start today with a little bit of background about myself, and then share some of our own personal journey on front yard farming. And then I'll share towards the end a couple of points about why you might want to get into front yard farming or urban farming, and then open it up for conversation and discussion after that. So to start with a little bit of a background about me. So I was trained as a scientist, and I worked as a cancer researcher for over 25 years. And then in 2019, I transitioned out of science and medical research to work as a leadership coach in our business with my wife for the Institute of Regenerative Leadership. And it was around this time that I started embracing a different philosophy in life, a holistic approach to life. And as a result of that, in 2023, I became a holistic management educator and consultant, and still working in that role as well. And although my training, I was very much immersed in the whole idea of being a reductionist and looking at life from a very much a reductionism point of view, I now consider myself to be a holistic science, embracing that holistic side of life. I'm also, one of my roles is also I'm the chair for Living Earth Projects, which is what brings me here today to be speaking with you now. And as a collective, we're about inspiring and growing the front yard farming movement and the urban farming movement. So our vision is just to imagine your city where every verge is green and productive. Every child knows where food comes from and how to grow food. And every home is part of a solution to the issues we're facing, like climate change, food insecurity, and disconnection. Now, when I'm talking about front yard farming, we're talking about growing food in our front yards, in our backyards, and maybe public spaces that we have access to that we can grow food in, which is distinct from the community gardens and or the commercial urban farming space, which both play an important role in urban farming, but that's a different topic than I'm going to be talking about today. And it's important to remember that you don't need a lot of space to grow fresh, healthy food. And this is an example I always like to share with people. So we will often go to our local nursery, we'll grab some seedlings for lettuce, for example, and we can plot them out in a small pot like this when we grow this just in our patio area on a table. And, several weeks later, in this case, it's about between 7 and 11 weeks afterwards, you've got a beautiful platter of, a mixed green lettuce that you can go and pick at to put into a salad or anything else you might be wanting to eat. And so you don't need space. You can grow it anywhere and grow anything in a pot almost. So just to share some of our journey, we started the process of front yard farming in 2017. It was really very much the planning and the preparation stages. And out the front of our home, we have about 500 square meters of land that we can access and use to grow food. And I'll show a photograph in a moment. And we started planting our first trees 6 years ago, literally to this very month. So this is what the front of our home looks like, what it looked like back in 2000 and 2019. We had a few. There's my dog Socrates on the right-hand side there, and a few trees dotted the edge of our property, but mainly what we were growing was grass across most of our front area at the front of our home, and the grass actually struggled to grow. And there's a couple of reasons for that. In Perth, Western Australia, we have hot, dry summers and quite sandy, depleted soil. The soil's not very rich. So we wanted to know what could we actually grow in this environment, and that was the challenge that we had to learn and discover how to overcome that. So we started planting about 6 years ago, and this is what it looked like 2 years later after we started. Our trees were starting to grow. There's an orange tree right there, and we also put in a few vegetable gardens. The olive trees, for example, were starting to grow. The front yard was starting to look very, very different from where it started. And one of the things that we also did was we started planting lots of other plants, which gave lots of flowers. You can see here we've got a bougainvillea against the wall there. We've got kangaroo paws in the front down here, some lavenders. We had to plant things that would bring in the insects, the pollinators, to then pollinate the trees and the food producing plants that we needed to grow the food. And this is what it literally looks like today. I took these photographs a week or two ago. Our garden is full of life. These olive trees here are now fully mature and they're producing huge amounts of olives. They last year produced about 100 kilograms of olives, which we pickled and we're enjoying now. We've got a whole range of foods on this side over here on the right. There's our olive tree here. We've got ground covers. In this case, it's sweet potato and potatoes. They form really good ground covers and they are very productive things to grow, we've discovered in our front yard. We've got kale growing here. You can see there's an example of a cauliflower. These are just things that are growing around our yard that are outside of actual vegetable garden plots. Over here on the right, you can see this feature here, which is a green wall we've got growing now. And all that was a trellis that we have now grown a passion fruit vine over that now forms a beautiful feature that also provides wind and shade protection for our vegetable garden on the other side of that. And it's very productive itself. It produces a heap of passion fruit that we really enjoy. This is our orange tree out the front. This is now about 3 meters tall. It's very productive this year for the first time, produced about 80 delicious oranges. And we've got beautiful nut and fruit trees. This is a peach tree that's out right now in full bloom. And it's a very productive tree and we really enjoy the peaches that it produces in a few months' time. So when we started this journey, I was really quite naive about how to grow food. I know I enjoy eating food, but how to grow it, I was quite naive. And seriously, I used to think, how hard can this actually be? And what I discovered was it was a very humbling journey to go on. I didn't know how to harvest seeds from plants and fruits. I didn't know how to germinate them. I didn't know how to transplant seedlings safely without damaging them. I didn't know how to prepare a garden bed to grow things. I didn't know what even went into healthy soil. I knew about soil microbes, but I didn't understand what vital role they play in building healthy soil. I knew about biocides, pesticides, and herbicides, but I didn't understand their impact on the soil microbes. I had to learn about, sun and shade and where to plant things. I like eating chilies, and chilies need lots of sun to produce lots of chilies. They don't do very well in the shade, and there's lots of things like that. Most plants have a particular requirement for sun and shade, and I didn't really know much about that when we started. I didn't understand the importance of weeds and the vital role they play in helping to rebuild soil. Didn't know how to prune trees. Some of the things that I've really learned, which have been great valuable lessons, was all waste is actually a resource. All of our waste goes into composting, mulching, worm farming, which we then use the products of all that to now help build our soil and then recycle all those nutrients and help the next crop of foods and plants to grow. I've learned about the critical role birds play in our environment. One thing that we've really noticed is how many birds we now attract into our property. And they play a vital role as they fly around over the property. They drop manure all over the property. Again, helps to recycle those nutrients and enrich the soil. Perth, where we live, is a very brittle environment, and I didn't understand anything about the difference between a brittle versus a non-brittle environment and how you manage those landscapes differently. So that was a big learning point for me. And one of my biggest lessons is that nature doesn't grow monocrops. Nature loves diversity. And so now when we walk around our property, we're always looking to see how can we make our property more diverse? How can we introduce more diversity? So while I was quite naive, I was fortunate that my wife, Barb, she comes from a farming family in New Zealand, and she grew up knowing a lot about plants and how to grow food. So I've been fortunate to learn a lot from Barb. So today, when I walk around the property, I see our property humming with life and productivity. We see a lot of biodiversity. We have a diversity of trees, plants, weeds, birds, and bees. And one of the things that Barb did that was really was wise looking back. She went into our local nursery and bought a packet of flowering seeds like everlastings and marigolds, and she sprinkled them around. And now every year, we've got, as I've shown this photograph here on the right, we've got a huge amount of flowering plants that are bursting into flower at this time of the year. And the bees, you got to hear the bees on a sunny day. The bees are just buzzing everywhere around our front yard. We have an abundant soil life. It's full of earthworms and slaters and other insects, indicating there's a good amount of soil biology active in our soil. We have very little or no bare soil. One of the lessons I've learned since starting this process was that nature doesn't like bare ground. And we work very hard to make sure that we can maintain as much coverage over our soil as possible. And I think as these photographs would probably show you that we've really transformed our home. But really, I think I've transformed myself in particular. When I walk around walk around and look at all the things that we're growing in our front yard in particular, how pleasing it is and how good it feels knowing that I've taken a seed that I've harvested from somewhere. I've now grown a tree that's 2 to 3 meters tall and it's growing, and I can see that plant growing into a beautiful tree. And I find that really amazing. And that's the sort of feeling I wish for other people to experience what I have experienced in this process. So there's many benefits of front yard farming and urban farming, and these are just some of the things that I've listed here. And I could spend a lot of time talking about all these, but as far as reasons why you might want to get into front yard farming or urban farming, I just want to talk about these two today: food security and healthy food. So firstly, we all need to eat food, so our food security is important to all of us. But our food security is actually under threat from a number of things. Firstly, there's land degradation. A lot of our agricultural land is being degraded. And by that, I mean we're losing soil fertility. It's getting harder and harder to grow food. There's also climate change, which is adding to that challenge. And as a result of that, in 2014, the United Nations estimated that we only have about 60 growing seasons left, which is now down to 49. So if we take this at face value, this is quite a critical area that everybody needs to be quite concerned about. How are we going to feed ourselves into the future? And there's also a new emerging threat that's come about in recent years, that of carbon farming. So one of the unintended consequences of countries like Australia implementing policies like net zero to do with carbon emissions, multinational companies are now going in and they're buying prime agricultural land and they're now planting trees. So where we used to grow food, we're now growing trees. And this is also going to be a challenge into the future. And as a result of all this, it's estimated by 2050 that about 30% of all of our food will need to come from urban spaces. And that's a massive number. And you think about how much food we eat collectively, how are we going to grow that much food in urban spaces is a real challenge for all of us. And we're nowhere near that at present. So another reason why you might want to get into growing your own food is for reasons of your health. So for our optimal health, we do need to have a healthy, diverse diet. Diverse foods provide us with a full range of nutrients and phytonutrients that plants can provide. When we eat seasonal food, we get exposed to a greater range of food rather than eating the same foods all year long. I mean, so many foods are available all year now in the supermarkets that we tend to eat the same things, but what we're doing is limiting our exposure to a range of nutrients and phytonutrients that are beneficial to our health. And a simple rule of thumb, which is the more nutrient dense a food is, the better it usually tastes. And I've been blown away with how good celery can taste. So this is an example. This is a photograph of some celery we're growing in the backyard at the moment. I can't believe how good celery tastes. When I go outside and cut a piece of ripe celery off and either eat it right there or put it into a salad or something else, I'm blown away by how good that celery can actually taste, as opposed to normally what I'd experience from a supermarket and how bland it can actually taste. So if you want tastier food and that's good for you, try growing it yourself. Local ripe fruit and veggies often have the highest nutrient levels. This is again ideal for our health. Commercial food is often picked before it's fully ripe, which means the nutrient levels aren't as high as they could be. And furthermore, nutrient levels will decline while food is being stored or indeed being transported, in some cases hundreds to thousands of kilometres to our home or to the supermarkets near our home. Biocides, pesticides, insecticides, these are also not good for our health. Unless the food is actually certified organically grown, commercial food can contain harmful biocide residues. And just using this as an example again, commercial lettuce can be sprayed every week, once a week, for a 6 or 7 week life cycle. So when you're buying fresh lettuce from a supermarket, you can be exposed to a lot of nasty chemicals that aren't good for your health. And so if you're interested in your health, this is just another reason why you might want to grow your own food. So I'll leave that part of it there. So just those benefits of urban farming, we can help address food security, and you can help to grow healthy food for yourself and help give your health a real boost. And you can, once your system's up and running and functional and nice and productive, you can save money as well, which is good for the back pocket. So I just want to finish with this. For those that are actually living in the Perth environment, Living Earth Projects, we are having a full day workshop on the 22nd of November. It's a Saturday. Sow, grow, eat, dirt to dinner day. We're celebrating food, health and community. It's at the Piney Lakes Environmental Education Centre in Winthrop, which is just south of Perth. If you're in Perth, love for you to turn up and come along. I don't have a flyer to share, but when we do have a flyer to share, I will put it into the LinkedIn LinkedIn group for the Livable Cities Collective, so you'll be able to access that way. Or else you could just send me a message directly via LinkedIn if you'd like to. And just to say thank you for your attention. I look forward to the discussion and questions that might follow. And I just Murray, Morris and Raquel asked me to share this. This is just a list of things that we're currently growing in our home. So I counted up, there's about 52 things that we're currently growing across our front and backyard. I'm sure there's some things that I've left off here, but these are the things that occurred to me when I was preparing these slides. So I'll stop there and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Extraordinary, Bernard. Thank you so much. That is just amazing. 6 years.
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing that right now.
Perfect.
But, there we go.
Thank you. Yeah, and look, there's a lot there. I do like eating at your place. It hasn't happened often, but it's it's certainly tasty. And there's so many questions and thoughts that I have, and one is, getting started and creating this. What was the easy start for you that said, okay, well, I can do this, let's do something next?
The place we started was planting some trees, and we actually hired an urban designer, someone we actually knew. My wife went to university with this person later in life, and this person, their business is helping to design gardens. And so we hired her. I think she charged us like $500 or something. She came out, she looked at our garden, and she said, "This is a good place to plant some trees." And then we just went ahead and bought those and planted those. And then the garden started taking shape because we knew the trees would take the longest to mature. So we wanted to get started there. And then we, things just took shape and formed from that point onwards. Then and then just a few little things, like we planted some balustars, for example, which we picked up from Bunnings, the local hardware shop, and we were selling them. And the thing is that we've planted lots of plants that self-seed readily, and so that really helps to help the garden to take shape. That's been a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, I understand. I'd love to hear what other people are doing in this space, and also where this connects. You two parts to that. One is how this creates the community in your street with your neighbours also, and I think I'd like to hear who else is growing some food. What's been some successes, some challenges? Not everyone has an amazing front yard size that Bernard has as well. what are we doing in our apartment blocks?
This is Anna. I can talk about a future proposal, perhaps, and any ideas or thoughts or suggestions. My partner and I are looking at developing a new front yard garden at our house. We're in early stages of considering what plants we might put in. But one example is that we were looking at putting in daisies, and then we quickly realized that we could supplement daisies with chamomile as an opportunity to provide some nutritious food options for the community, and it's quite a public place that we live. I would be interested to know, are there any challenges associated with noting our liturgical society that we currently live in? Are there challenges associated with any sort of legal risk issues if somebody comes onto your property to access, what's essentially sort of, in the interest of community food, or any sort of council challenges from that angle? As well as, I guess, I'm thinking of trip hazards and falling and that sort of thing, but potentially, food implications as well. If somebody picks some food that's a little bit off, they get sick. Is there anything implied in that? Sorry to drag the conversation into, that sort of level, but yeah, interested in any insights there, perhaps.
I'm happy to share my experience. At this point, we haven't had any issues with food. And we haven't had any problems with people stealing food that we know of either. Like one year we grew about 15 or 20 watermelons across the front yard, and no one picked a watermelon. They were 15-kilo watermelons. They were big things. And in the same year, we grew about 50 pumpkins across. They lasted us a whole year, the pumpkins we grew. And we didn't notice anybody stealing them. All the pumpkins seemed to be there. So we haven't had any problems like that. Thankfully, no one's come onto the property and taken food and had a problem with like an allergy or getting sick or anything. We've got some nut trees that we are growing. Our challenge is actually keeping the birds off the nuts, because we haven't produced much from those trees because the birds get to them. That's a challenge. We're still working out how to net those trees so we actually get some. But yeah, they're real, but we haven't had any of those problems. The sort of issues that we have had is neighbours complaining that our trees are blocking the view of the street. They can't see traffic when it comes up and down the road, or the trees might be, leaning over a property line, those sorts of things. The deputy mayor's been out to our property a couple of times. We're in the city of Wanneroo in Perth. He loves what we're doing, and he was saying, look, the council would never get involved on those sorts of issues, like for trees. So that's good to know. We went to the guidelines for the Shire, the city where we live, and said, where can we plant? And they said you can plant on the verge. Just trees should be 2.5 meters back from the road. So we were mindful of those sorts of things, but trees still grow, and they don't always grow straight up and down. So we had to deal with those sorts of issues, but largely we haven't had too much of a problem. We live in a cul-de-sac, a small. It's a crescent, but it's not particularly busy. It's not a very busy road. Most of the neighbours who see us, we're out there working most weekends in the yard, and when they walk past, they just go, "Oh, I love what you're doing. It's so great, so inspiring." A few neighbours, can you come up the road and work on our property?
Well, if they pay you.
We joke like that. We just don't have time to help other people necessarily. But like when we grew the watermelons that year, we grew too many watermelons for ourselves. So someone would walk past, and my wife would go, "Would you like a watermelon?" And she'd go, "Yes." And so she'd go inside, grab a knife and cut off and hand him this 15-kilo watermelon to carry home. So it has been a good way to interact with our neighbours. They've all been very positive. They love what we're doing. It's such a contrast. I didn't show photographs of what it looks like around us, but the house immediately to our left, as we're looking at the house from the road, the house to our left is all paved. 3 houses across the road from us, fake lawn and paving. So our street has that kind of mix, but our house is a complete contrast to what most of our immediate neighbours are. So it is a challenge, but most people are receptive to it.
Yeah, no, look, it looks fantastic and incredibly rewarding too, as you say, to be able to pick your own fresh produce that's nutrient rich
Yeah. And I
and
just
such a
remember,
contribution.
yeah. And I did share at the beginning, you know, we started 2 years preparing the block before we started planting the first tree. So it was digging holes and ripping out lawn and stuff like that. And it did look like a mess. And we went to a Christmas street party, and one of the neighbours said, "What are you doing with that front yard of yours?" And then all the chatter stopped, and they turned to us and said, everyone listened in, and we said, "We're getting ready to plant." But so you need some tolerance, and you need to be enrolling your neighbours in what you're doing as well.
It sounds like you almost need to stick some signs up as you're intending to do something, informing your neighbours. This is what's happening. This is what we're working towards.
In hindsight, we would have
Answer
done
those
that.
questions.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I'm
yeah,
joking.
yeah. But in hindsight, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
we've written letters to our neighbours and said, look, you know, we realise our trees are getting out of hand. They need to be pruned. You know, we're not going to prune trees at any time of the year because it can kill the tree. So we will do them. Be patient. We are going to get to them. We're planning on pruning these trees in this month. So if you can just wait till then, that'll be, you know, so far since doing that, we haven't had any problems with them. Yeah.
That's incredibly considerate and respectful.
Yeah. Well, one of the neighbours did joke, "Can you move the trees?" So,
I was
Yeah.
just thinking about,
Go,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
go on, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the need to check in with our neighbours to grow trees. I think I'd be more upset with people with fake grass because no one asks about putting fake grass in. There does seem to be a mix up around our priorities these days.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, yeah. Please, Gail.
I was wondering whether you left a path for the pedestrians to get through you.
No. Our street doesn't have any footpaths on it at all. Yeah.
So everyone has to walk on the road.
Yeah. But that's how you'd have to walk on anybody's, as such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So a lot of the streets in our neighbourhood do have footpaths, but our street and a lot of streets like ours don't have footpaths. So yeah, just walk on the road.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
there's not a lot of traffic, so it's not a huge risk for people. But if you're living on a busier road, that might be
Well,
more of an
yeah,
issue.
I mean, the thing that struck me is blurring the boundaries between the front yard and the verge, because they're quite different things. In answer to Anna's question, there are insurance issues that the councils will often talk about, and anything you do on the verge, if someone gets hurt or whatever, you're liable, not the council. It is a bit of a minefield, and Gold Coast Council refuses to let anyone do anything because they worry about the insurance. They think they're liable, which they're not. None of the councils are. So I would separate the two. I grow food in my front yard, in my backyard, and I will leave food by the letterbox if people want to share it. But I don't grow food on the verge. I grow what's behind me on the verge.
Yeah, it's a good point. And different councils will have different policies.
Every
and rules on
council is
that.
different, and Canberra has got two different policy for fire-prone areas and non-fire-prone areas.
Yeah, that's good points.
Yeah. Sarah, go ahead. I did see your hand.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Go for it.
Finding I mean, I just thought I could share our efforts at curbside gardening. Can I share a picture? Is that allowed?
For sure. Please go ahead.
See if that works.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's on the screen now.
Okay, all right. So this was, I mean, we're not doing very well with the edibles. So this was actually when we first put this in, it was a bit of a COVID lockdown project to kind of create community and demonstrate, you know, how you can reallocate road space for something better than parking cars. It's on actually quite a busy street, both for cars, but also for people who are walking past to get to the harbour walkway. This is near Manly on the Northern Beaches. So yeah, we bought it. We got given this ancient little trailer and we filled it up. And the first season we got some food and we put the bench on. You know, every day we put chairs out and people would sit there and we put a book, books there, and people would stop. So, and did things like this and grew stuff. But it was only meant to be a short-term thing, but nearly over 4 years later, it's actually still there. And we've sort of slightly given, there's a few edibles in there, but we do struggle with edibles because they get eaten and they go to seed, and we're not very green fingered. So you go through spurts of energy of keeping it up and keeping it looking good, and then sort of lose interest for a while. So I'm sort of more into succulents and salvias and some of the things which flower for months on end and just kind of look nice. So yeah, it's still there. We don't put the chairs out anymore, but people, whenever you're out working, everyone comes past, they always chat, they always say nice things. Nobody's complained. We thought we'd get complaints because it takes up half a parking space, and haven't had a single one. So that was really encouraging. And it's right outside our kitchen window. So for us, it's an awful lot nicer to look at that than somebody else's parked car or parked boat or parked van or whatever. So we're very happy to keep it there. And for the price of it's $80 a year for the rego. So that gives you, so it was inspired by Adam Tranter in the UK, who did the van, and he was using that to create seating space on the curb, to make sort of legal parklets, basically. Yeah, so we haven't worried about any legalities, but nobody's complained, so it's still there.
That's extraordinary. It's great that it does stay there. Yeah, how wonderful.
It's actually much greener now. So we've got big plants, some big plants, and yeah, we did have a letter from the council about 3 months ago, and I thought, but it turned out there was some invasive succulent that had been growing in it, and we got a 10-page letter telling us about all the reasons why we had to get this succulent out. So we took that out, and now it's yeah.
That's a wonderfully creative idea, though. The trial, I like that. That's really good.
I mean, really, I'd love more cafes to do it. Create seating instead of parking. They can do that without having to go through the whole rigmarole of an official park flip. But nobody's done it yet.
Just keep it there. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I did see also, is it Aharon? How do I pronounce your name?
Yeah, Aaron is
Aaron, thank you.
The easiest way to do it.
And I didn't request before, just when you come on, just introduce yourself briefly, who you are, where you're from, and then please share.
Yeah, apologies about that. I was a little bit late coming to the meeting, but I'm also from Perth, the same as Bernard there, and I'm part of a startup social enterprise called Kinship Farms, and we're looking at, I suppose, pose the question, imagine that food is considered infrastructure. We spend so much money in our cities in regards to building resilient cities with roads, pipeworks, digital infrastructures, all these things that are necessary to keep our cities functioning. But it's very rare that food enters into that conversation. So it's really awesome to see conversations like this happening, and so many people, engaging in that. And Bernard, I caught the sort of halfway of your presentation there, but I'm super jealous of your front yard. That sounds fantastic, and the list of food that you're growing there is that's amazing. It's just a huge variety of food, and gosh, if just everyone could do a similar thing.
So where are you creating, or what are you creating?
Yeah,
share with us.
Similar, I suppose, to Anna, a future project. We're working with CSIRO at the moment on a project in Forestdale, which is in the southern parts of Perth, in stacking numerous agricultural enterprises into a small area to create a sustainable system within that small area. We've taken a little bit of inspiration, and Bernard probably is aware of North Freo Social Farm, which is in northern Fremantle. They're a community, I'll say a community farm, but a community garden. They do it a little bit differently to your typical community garden. Most community gardens, you have your plot, you rent out that plot, and it's your responsibility to manage it and grow out of that plot. North Rio Social Farm have a model where, as a subscriber, you have access to harvest the food from the collective farm. So it is run as a small market garden, and you have the access to come in and take your fair share of the harvest. It's a wonderful system, and it's working very, very well. They just had their annual general meeting, and from the sounds of things, there's a lot of exciting projects that they're going to get into over the next 12 months. So we've taken inspiration off that and are looking to how we can integrate more enterprises into that system to reduce a number of challenges that they have. So we have taken commercial aquaponics and we integrate that into the system. And with CSIRO, we're working at how that then works symbiotically with the market garden and the soil base to improve that soil for the market garden without needing to have an input from another source. So the source happens on site, similar to composting or things like that. This is a future project, but we would love to see more of these throughout Perth to start with, but many of our cities. We've got a number of the councils here that are very involved in the conversation. City of Stirling, City of Melville, in particular, both of those are very interested in what we're doing. City of Melville have included food into their sustainability strategy. They have a community climate action plan, and food is one of the main objectives for them, which is exciting to see. So it gives you a little bit of an idea as to what we're doing, Maurice.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. I look forward to hearing how it progresses and some progressive councils on board. That's terrific. I'm curious to know from others that are in our room, in the room here, what is interesting for you with this, and what could this lead you to create, whether in your home or with your council, with your community? What's the interest here? Why did you come? What did you want to get inspiration for? Heather, please.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I'm Heather. I'm living in Perth. It's awesome to see so many people from Perth here. It's pretty rare. I guess I'm interested, sort of come from an urban forestry background with a lot of community engagement, and I'm sort of looking at more climate adaptation, so developing solutions from a community level, and obviously food security is a really big part of that, as well as, you know, planting more trees for shade and keeping cool and all the other awesome stuff that nature-based solutions can provide. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, cool. So what could be inspirational here for you? What would be the next conversation to have?
I guess I'm already starting to have some conversations with local government about actions that sort of local groups can take. There's lots of sort of community level gardens around, which is really great to see. There's lots of, you know, people with amazing gardens growing their own food, but there's not really it's quite isolated pockets. So I think sort of getting the message out there that you know, anyone can do it. You don't need a huge garden. You can grow food on your patio. Just giving people lots of different options and a bit more education and behaviour change.
Lovely. For anyone here that wants to tap into that, any particular council areas or community groups or organisations that they can do that with, that you're connected with?
So that I'm connected with. So I've got my own consultancy, She Plant Cities, but I also sort of collaborate with local governments, also not-for-profits, WA Loves Nature, and Millennium Kids as well. And I'm also quite tapped into the international sort of urban forestry sort of community as well.
Beautiful. Well, I invite you and everyone else, if you want to share the work you're doing in the Livable Cities group or page in LinkedIn, just to keep that flowing, keep that moving on. And if you want to share what you're up to, that would be, if that's useful for you, then please do that. Yeah, thanks, Heather. Hey, Victoria.
Hi.
In the Gold Coast, great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'm a researcher at University of Queensland. So I'm doing a PhD in nature-based nature prescribing, but I'm also doing a RA job on a food insecurity and food waste project in Springfield, which is where I'm based. So that's just southwest of Brisbane. Our research is really looking at how communities share food to overcome food insecurity and also manage food waste. But most of that at the moment is connected with food bank organisations that share food from supermarkets, for example. But there's another aspect to this project when we're working with community and hearing from them different ideas about how to improve food security. So we're certainly interested in seeing if there's an appetite for people growing food at home or establishing a community garden, for example. So it's just good to get some ideas about what urban food gardening might look like for the community and getting some ideas to share back and see what the interest might be.
Fabulous. So are they creating them already in those areas that you're looking at?
No, not formally. So there will be people in the community who grow veg, for example, but in terms of creating a network where people might be able to share their fruit and veg or learn about how to start a growing in their own backyards, for example, we haven't had any of those types of conversations yet. We are exploring the possibility of a community garden. And that's, you know, what it's like in research, that it will take forever. But that involves a lot of, getting someone on board who can do that as a project, consult with community, look at where that might be. But there may well be spin-offs for opportunities for people to grow their own as well. And having ideas like this to share back into community is going to be really helpful.
Can I share to that point, Morris?
Please do.
Yeah, we've been doing our urban farming for 6 years, and whilst a lot of our neighbours really love what we're doing, they haven't been. No one's yet gone out there and broke ground with a shovel to plant their own tree out the front, for example. So we haven't been able to inspire our neighbours to, for example, to take it up. But I love the idea. Maybe it's a bit utopian in thinking, but if we all grew different things and we can do a swap meet on a weekend and share food, that to me, it sounds very utopian and ideal, but I believe that's a possibility for the future. And in terms of food security, I mean, I did this we had a Community Gardens Australia workshop in December. They went around Australia actually to all the major cities. There's 86 registered community gardens in Perth. That just Perth. But the Perth's got a population of what, 2.4 million people. You know, there's an awful lot of space that's not being utilised to grow food. And I love the point that Aaron made, that food should be considered an infrastructure, because we all need to eat, and we've all just been raised that food is always in the supermarket. But we've got challenges coming around climate change alone, how hard it might be to grow food into the future. And yeah, so it's something that it's important to all of us to think about this. And there was one more point that I've just forgotten now, but if it comes back, I'll share it again.
Food security?
Well, growing food, yeah, it's all part of our food security. But there was another point that Victoria made that I wanted to touch on. But It'll come back to me, don't worry.
Certainly, Aaron.
I'll just add there, Bernard, you know, it's you've got food security, you know, this you mentioned in your presentation about community, and you mentioned just afterwards community. You know, there's social levels in which there's real value in having food grown, whether it be that you are able to on your street. You have an abundance of a watermelon, and your neighbor down the road has an abundance of something else, and you trade. It brings a connection with you. So there's a community level. There's a social value in that, bringing us back together. You know, and then there's obviously the environmental, which has a huge level of value in it. That I think, coming back to the idea of food as infrastructure, you know, you might look at your backyard or your front verge there, and you talked about the soil and the improvement of the soil, and we know science has shown the benefits that has in regards to the ecosystem and to sequestration and to a number of other things. So that's one verge. Magnify that, aggregate that across an entire city, and all of a sudden you have a massive area that is creating some really beneficial, some co-benefits to the environment. So there's so many layers here of value that I think need to start being looked at in how we can measure that, really getting some frameworks, some metrics in which we can start measuring that. And once we can do that, once we can measure the value there, cities will start looking at then how they're able to apply that in an infrastructure type sense. So this is something that I think is really important to look at as well.
Yeah, and Perth,
so wonderful.
Perth's the green canopy, we're at what, 8% green canopy or something in Perth, which is one of the lowest in Australia. And so there is an interest in people to plant trees, for example, to increase the urban canopy. And I just go, well, why not do a mix of food producing trees as well? And you can address some food security and urban canopy at the same time. So climate cooling, you know, we can achieve multiple outcomes with a single action. And I think we need to be thinking more about it like that.
That's great. I'm wondering where else we're having that. We've got a very Perth-centric group here, and that's wonderful. So I'm going to switch us over to Melbourne and just see what's happening in Melbourne with this. Lucille, are you here? Hello.
Yeah.
Hi there. Anything here that has caught your eye or your ear or your taste bud in?
Well, I'm probably I'm here to learn. I've got my rental has a lovely outdoor kind of decked area with some peach trees, which the first year we moved in, they were growing, and because I lacked green fingers, we sort of some animals got to it, and then I discovered all the different pests that attack plants, and it's taken me a few years to figure out how to actually address those pests. And you also have to do that obviously in time for the growing season, otherwise the fruit don't come back again. So I think it's that kind of slow process. But when it comes to succulents and all the other plants that are there, it's really more about pruning them and keeping them happy and healthy. And so I think I really enjoyed doing that in the small space that I've been given. But I think what we're seeing today, you know, you can really push it quite far, even with temporary solutions like the trailer that we saw or the bowl on the table. So I think there's a lot of potential. It's just a matter of getting started, really. So yeah, I think I appreciate the ideas from today.
Yeah, perfect.
Can I just share one of the members of our Living Earth Projects committee? She's originally from Nigeria, actually, but she's been given a grant from one of the local universities to go and to teach urban farming to the student village at the university, who all they have access to is a bit of shared ground and mainly their own balconies. And so she's been funded to try and go into these students and teach them how to grow food in their very limited space that they've got access to. It's a wonderful idea, and she's going to share the results of that experience at our event in November. So yeah, that's quite interesting. So
very nice. Yeah.
There are people doing lots of really interesting things in this space.
Yeah, loving it. Thank you. And let's bring it back to Perth. And I'd love to hear a couple of minutes we've got left. Agatha, I only know you electronically. Great to meet you.
Well, lovely meeting you here online, finally. Yes, so I'm also based in Perth. Bernard, I'm south of the river, so close to White Gum Valley, where there is a very well-known project happening. It's called Valley Verges. So basically, the verges are sort of converted into native gardens. Mostly they use native plants, but I've noticed they're not only native plants. It's like a mix of, you know, growing fruit trees, not so much vegetables, but maybe some shrubs as well that produce actually food. They consider bush tucker, which is native foods, right? So I think this is actually quite interesting. And you know, I love your garden. I mean, what you've shown is like dream for many people here to have a front yard like this, producing food and just looking so beautiful. It is definitely an asset to the street. And as you said, so many neighbors appreciate that. I know that there's always someone who sort of, you know, have those concerns about maybe trees dropping fruits, or, you know, like the verge may be looking messy because you haven't picked up, you know, falling leaves or things like this. In regard to access, I know Gail, lady from Brisbane, right? She mentioned about, you know, this right of way, I would call it, right? Which I understand how this works. That, you know, on average, someone who is just walking past could actually walk into that part of your verge because they have a right to that. So I guess I just got this idea just right now that maybe in this type of farming, front yard farming, maybe it would be considerable for you to, and for everyone else, to plant native plants closer to the road and sort of create a footpath. And I think that would also be an asset to the community, because then they can sort of like, you know, enjoy your garden a little bit more, because they can actually walk through, and there wouldn't be those, you know, complaints maybe that, you know, I have to go on the road, I have to walk, you know, on the road because, you know, because there is this garden, you know, being grown here. So that would be something that I would like to suggest to anyone who's considering this kind of project in their front yard. I've seen projects like this here in Palmyra. I live in Bigton, but I used to live in Palmyra, and very beautiful native gardens. They're being planted, and I noticed that yes, people leave that space, like little, you know, footpath in that, you know, within that verge. So that's an idea, and I think it will solve many problems. I understand there are different councils; they have different rules. But yeah, I also understand how people react, you know, to those issues, and it's almost surprising how, you know, people pick up those little things like, oh, I can't walk there, like, and you know, they post on Facebook, complain about this, so you know, it's a whole story there. Yeah. But look,
Thanks.
It's amazing.
It is indeed, Agatha. I think this conversation is very delicious. Let me say, thank you, Bernard. Thank you, everyone, for being here. That's a wrap.